All right, we've been talking about one list of numbers at a time, which you think about as sort of one measurement on each of a group of objects, each of a group of subjects. But very often in life, we get to make more than one kind of measurement on each of a group of objects. Like we might measure a given person's height and weight and other stuff, blood pressure and eye color and whatever. We might measure someone's years of education and income. We might measure somebody's undergraduate GPA and their score on the GMAT exam. Okay, so there's a lot of situations where we make more than one measurement on each of a collection of individuals. That's getting into multivariate data from univariate data. We've been talking about univariate data so far. Now we're talking about multivariate data. So like before, first thing we want to concern ourselves with is how do you look at this stuff? What's a good way to represent it to get some mental picture of what's going on? And then we'll talk about how do you summarize it with some small number of numbers. How do you summarize these multivariate observations? How do you reduce them so that you can wrap your mind around them more easily? So a data set that we're going to talk about, this is another one of our sample data sets. These are measurements on a handful of variables for, was it 800 and, I've forgotten how many students it is, 913 business students who went on to one of 5 quote-unquote good business schools. So these were undergraduate majors, went on to business school, and what do we have measurements for them? Measurements for these 913 individuals. We have an indicator of which of the 5 schools they ended up going to, what their verbal GMAT score was, what their quantitative GMAT score was, what their undergraduate GPA was, and what their first year MBA GPA was. Okay? So we've got a handful of variables for each of 913 students. So there's a histogram of their verbal GMATs, rather. There's a histogram of their quantitative GMATs. There's their undergraduate GPAs, blah, blah, blah. So this doesn't, I mean, a question I might be, suppose I'm an admissions director for a business school. I might be interested in predicting who's going to do well in business school based on their undergraduate GPA, their GMAT scores, because I might use that as a criterion for figuring out whom to admit. Yes? All right. So I might be interested in what's the association between undergraduate GPA and first year MBA GPA, for example. Do they tend to go up together? How predictive is one of the other, so on. Well, so one of the best tools for looking at questions like this is a scatter plot. Each dot on the scatter plot is one of the 913 students. So a dot is an individual. And on one axis, we're plotting one of the variables for those individuals. On the other, we're plotting another variable. So in this particular case, on the vertical axis, we've got the quantitative GMAT score. And on the horizontal axis, the x-axis, we've got the verbal GMAT score. Okay? Generally, well, first of all, there's a lot of scatter for these 913 students. But generally, there's sort of an upward trend to what's going on. People who did better on the quantitative also tended to do better on the verbal. Okay? Let's look at first year MBA GPA versus undergraduate GPA. All right. So these kind of bunch up in the corner. Why do they bunch up in the corner? Okay, they're skewed to the left. What makes them skewed to the left? Right. How high can you get? Okay, you can get to a 4. Students going to one of 5 good business schools, are they going to be closer to a 0 GPA or closer to a 4 GPA? Yeah. Okay. So you got people who are, coming very close to maxing out the rating scales, and some of them aren't. Many of them are, and then some of them drift off to the left. So you have this skew to the left that you were talking about. all right? Again, generally a bit of a positive trend, I would say, right? That sort of, you have, well, I mean, you got some low values on both. All right, let's play with this a little bit.